Hello, and thank you for watching. I'm Rahul Bhardwaj, the President and CEO of the Institute of Corporate Directors. As Canada and the world grapple with the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ICD is producing a series of webinars and webcasts that focus on critical areas of governance that will help directors navigate the challenges in the weeks and months ahead. Today, we're discussing the implications of this pandemic and the ensuing economic crisis on cybersecurity and cyber resilience. As tens of millions of people suddenly find themselves working from home and purchasing even the basic necessities online for delivery, the pressure on companies to keep their clients' data secure is immense. Joining me to discuss this is Michael Parent, a professor at the Siegel Graduate School at the Beatty School of Business at Simon Fraser University. Michael was formerly the Vice Dean at the Telfer School of Management, University of Ottawa, and spent over a decade in the high technology industry. Michael is also the academic director for the Vancouver cohort of the ICD Rotman Directors Education Program and teaches the ICD's IT and cybersecurity risk session nationally. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, Rahul. Thank you.
Great to be here. Let's start with the big picture, Michael. What has the impact of COVID-19 been on our overall cyber resilience at both the enterprise and national levels?
Well, I guess they say, Rahul, that there are really only two types of organizations in the world, those that know that they've been breached and those that don't. And criminals, like anyone else, are opportunists, and crises like COVID-19 really provide increased opportunities for social engineering and cyber crimes. And so we're in a heightened sense of awareness in which criminals are really taking advantage of people's lower resiliency and resistance to this. I think Einstein famously is attributed to have said that in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. And I think in this case, I think he meant it positively, but the negative side of this is that we find that the threat environment is in fact getting more severe. Because the paradox is that while our offices are empty, the amount of traffic, as you've noted, in the virtual world has increased exponentially and will continue to increase while we conduct most of our lives online. And so while our physical borders are closed, the virtual ones remain wide open and relatively undefended. And everything from an enterprise point of view that we've tried to contain and constrain is now wide open and distributed to all of the employees working worldwide. I mean, just even recently, the beer store in Ontario was forced to go to a cash-only system when its point-of-sale system was attacked. Marriott Hotels had a second breach after its disastrous 2018 breach that saw over 500 million of its guests' records affected then, and even more now. And so the use of devices at home and the fact that we're all using our own devices that haven't been vetted for security is in fact exacerbated the problem itself. That, along with the fact that the criminals are a lot more engaged and a lot more active, that we expect phishing, smishing, and vishing to increase. And not only that, but the response rates to these attacks to increase as well. So it's sort of a twofold hit for this particular threat itself. And then finally, we're all doing this. We're collaborating on video, on Bright Talk, on Zoom, on GoToMeeting, on Collaborate, whatever platform. And we don't really know these technologies. We don't really know how secure they are. And more importantly, how to secure them from guest access and unauthorized access. Even recently, for example, colleagues of mine that were meeting virtually through a Zoom meeting were Zoom bombed by a troll who came in and used profanity and racial slurs and totally disrupted their meeting. So, we're in a place where, we're using online resources more extensively. We don't know as much about them. The criminals are there. They're taking advantage of our naivete. And we're doing so in a climate where we expect the network to go down regularly, bandwidth to be constrained, and our ability to interact to be constrained.
So, Michael, in this terribly dynamic environment that we're faced in now, what are some of the immediate things that firms should be addressing and prioritizing?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think, if you look at your contingency plan, so your business continuity plan, your disaster recovery plan, your incident response plan, these all need to be updated. Communications and coordination is challenging when staff is all dispersed. The other thing is you also won't be able to call everyone in to a central response center or to a war room to respond to any kind of such crisis. And so I think it's imperative that these plans need to be updated to reflect our new reality. Along with that, I think we need to heighten security awareness amongst employees through ongoing education, vigilance, and the introduction also of stronger security measures like multi-factor authentication, so that we can in fact ensure that the right people have access to the right data and no more. But finally, I think most importantly, when I speak to security operations staff, we need to remember as well that we need to look after them. What if they get ill? What if they're looking after a family member that is ill? What if they get tired? What if they get burnt out? And so this is a heightened time from them, and any threat gets attenuated by the fact that they may not be able to respond. So we need to look at their well-being and ensure that we take care of them as well.
So let's build on that a little bit, Michael. Boards are, very concerned about the safety and the security of their employees, the health of their customer base. They want to make sure that they've got business continuity plans. So there's a lot going on. So let's talk a little bit about how can the board put some structure around this? What should the directors be focused on to minimize their organization's exposure, given all the other priorities?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, cybersecurity is on the agenda of every single board worldwide. And so, the first piece of advice is keep on doing it and perhaps do even a little more of it. We talk about cyber hygiene in the director's education program at an individual and at an institutional level. I think that this cyber hygiene and good cybersecurity habits become even more critical because your points of breach and your points of vulnerability now have multiplied from maybe perhaps a few hundred in the enterprise context to literally thousands around the world, not just within your organization, but also your suppliers, your customers, everyone that interacts with your organization is now doing so electronically. And so these all become points of vulnerability for you. Management is dealing with chaos in the business, layoffs, business reductions, closures. And so the key question there becomes how do we do so, but without leaving the organization more vulnerable as a result of not, say, attending to particular aspects of our organization. I think in this climate as well, it's imperative that boards get weekly reports on activities, either on phone or Zoom calls or video conferencing on what's going on in terms of the cyber threat environment, what's going on in terms of penetration attempts within the company itself, and what's being done to do that. I think also it's important as you sort of increase on the one side that you decrease on the other. I think now is not the time, for example, to engage in widespread non-security based IT projects. And so now is not the time to replace your core processing systems. Now is not the time to cut over to a brand new enterprise system. And so put these to the extent that you can on hold as much as possible. And I think along with that, avoid escalating privileges and access to data. And so there will be a temptation to open the enterprise wide open, but I think you scale back on doing that right now as well. And as I said before, watch for staff burnout. Burnout leads to poor decision making, slow reaction times, and to catastrophic events. And so you need to ensure that your staff doesn't get burnt out, and to have a succession plan in place in case that they do.
Right. So that's a lot to do. So let's finish off our conversation by exploring what type of questions should boards be asking about their cyber resilience during this crisis, given all of the things that are already going on?
Right. Well, and then you make a good point. I mean, it's you don't want to pile on and yet here's more to do. So if I were to distill it to the essence, it would be, 5 things, most of which boards are already doing. And so the key message here is keep doing what you're doing, but maybe do a little more of it and do a little better in terms of paying attention to it, especially in this climate. So let me just offer 5 things that boards would want to look at. I think number one is to get an idea of the threat environment and the climate itself. To what extent have security incidents, internal and external, increased? And have we seen new types of attacks and attackers? And more importantly, how are we doing as an enterprise at repelling them? And so it's sort of getting an idea of what the threats are and whether that's increasing or not, and how good we are at staying secure and staying resilient. I think the second question is to sort of then look beyond the organization and ask what impact has this had on our customers, our suppliers, our employees, our stakeholders. If you look, as you mentioned before in your introduction, we are all ordering even the most mundane things online now. And so your volume of online transactions could easily triple, quintuple. And so how are we dealing with that volume, and how are we adjusting? And more importantly, I mean, it's obvious that, we thought that this would be a temporary measure, that we'd all go home and a couple of weeks later we'd be back at the office. Clearly, that's not going to be the case. And so how do we adjust if this lasts, say, another month, another 2 months? And are we monitoring for burnout and exhaustion in our security staff, and ensuring that they stay at the best possible level in terms of their skills? The third thing, as I mentioned before, is crisis response plans. The business continuity plan, the disaster recovery plan, the incident response plan. Have they taken into account distributed communications and staff? And in fact, have we in fact gone beyond just our enterprise and contacted our cyber insurance providers and our cybersecurity consultants to ensure that they also have the resources in place and that they will be able to respond and help us should an incident occur? Fourth, is to simply ask the perennial resource question. Are we dedicating enough resources to cyber resilience? What do we need that we don't have, and when can we put that into place? And how can the board best support management in executing on this? And then finally, it's dealing with employees working from work, that the workforce is distributed. How are we supporting them to work from home safely and securely? What possible gaps or exposures exist in terms of their own devices? And again, what is management doing to address these gaps? And so it's all the cyber hygiene factors that we already know inside the enterprise, except now as a board, of course, you're putting optics on this in thousands, literally thousands of locations.
It's remarkable, Michael. We've covered a lot of territory in a very short amount of time. This has been very helpful. Thank you very much, Michael. And thank you all for tuning in. Please look out for new installments of this information series every week as we navigate this challenge together. Keep well.